Welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I'm so glad that you are joining us today. We believe that healthy communication is oxygen for our relationships and our leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, like I'm doing right now, I hope that our time today inspires you to breathe life into your world with your communication. Hey, before we hop into this great interview on today's podcast, I wanted to ask you a question. Would you like to experience a boost of confidence the next time you're asked to give a presentation or an update to your team on the progress of a project? It's time to lose the ums, the sweat, the inability to be clear and captivating. That's why Speak with People has different coaching programs for you. Head to speakwithpeople.com/coaching and check more, and let's get started. Well, thank you again for being a part of today's podcast. When it comes to leading, do you lead with people or do you lead at them? Today, we're starting a huge series on leadership, the biggest, longest series we have done. And if you go to speakwithpeople.com/leadwithpeople, you can download a free guide, which we've put together that will help you dive into what authentic leadership is. 20 different leaders from around the country have provided insight, and it's yours free. Just head to speakwithpeople.com/lead with people. Well, today our world is rapidly evolving. Leaders today are realizing that success transcends the old traditional models of authority and control and leading out of fear. And leaders for far too long have led that way. So we're launching this series to be able to dive into the heart of becoming a healthy and authentic leader. And today we're diving in with the episode number 1 in this series with an amazing guest, Aaron Burke. He recently released a book called The Unfair Advantage. And today we're going to talk about obstacles and how as leaders we can overcome them. I followed Aaron from afar from a long time. I so appreciate his heart. I also appreciate his heart because we planted a church in the same time. He kept going with his and I handed ours off, but I'm so excited and just have a deep admiration for him. Aaron, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
I'm honored to be with you. Excited about this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, hey, before we hop in, just for our listeners to kind of get to know you a little bit more, could you tell us a little bit more about your story, your history, what you do, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I'm 39 years old, and my wife and I, at 29 years old, packed up our whole life, moved to Tampa with a 6-month-old baby, a demonic dog that went on to, I would say a better place, but definitely didn't go on to be a better place. So it was somewhere else, but we went with vision, a dream in our heart to start a church in the Tampa Bay area. Never thought it would work, just wanted to obey God. And so we started this in a rundown dollar theater in South Tampa. And so since then, it's been a journey of our life. We just celebrated 10 years at the church. It's been a wild journey. Last night, we just had our very first interest meeting for our 10th location. That's 9 physical locations. And then we do a big online presence. So we are loving life, excited. It's, the more people that come, the more complicated it gets, and the more leadership I learn, and the more things I tell people what not to do. So if you want to learn all the wrong things to do in leadership and ministry, I've got a list of stories that I could share with you because we've made a lot of mistakes, but it's been a journey along the way. Now we have 5 kids. Here's the crazy thing about our family is my first was born in July. 25 months later, my second was born in August. 25 months later, my third was born in September. 25 months later, my fourth was born in October. And you'll never believe it, 25 months later, my fifth was born in November. Your boy is a planner. So
Wow.
That's how we work.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, we have a common thing there. My wife and I also have 5 children, so we know that life. So I think my kids might be a little bit older, so I'm already feeling a little tired looking at pictures of your family with all the young ones. Beautiful, incredible family.
Thank you.
I love it. I keep wondering there. I should have asked this off recording, but there's a sign on a church building down the road from my house. We live in Odessa, and I'm wondering when that's going to be, an open campus. So you probably can't tell me now, but
we're a month away.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, Odessa is a hard area to get permitting. We're finishing it up right now.
I bet.
That's again, it's part of our story. It's just miracle after miracle. God gave us that piece of property, 18.5 acres right there in Van Dyke. So it's been a cool story.
That's incredible. I literally in the last 2 weeks, I've had probably 2, if not 3 conversations with leaders who've asked, hey, do you know anything about Radiant coming to I was like, well, hopefully I'll find out and I'll tell him.
Yeah, yeah, it's been fun.
That's great. Well, hey, jumping into this, conversation, leading with people, not at them. There's so much thought around leadership and, kind of, it seems like the old days of, leading at people, leading from a place of fear, authority, control. Why, can you just take us to a place, where you got to, why you do what you do?
Yeah.
What helped you kind of step up to start leading and lead from a place of health and authenticity and all of those kind of things?
Yeah, well, you teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And
Mm,
I've always realized it that the greatest things I ever learned in life was not because of some lesson that was taught to me from a stage or some title of some person that was over me, but it was just by the example, the person that
mm,
watching their life. I learned to pray, and I know there's a lot of people that are not believers on this and Christians on this, but I learned to pray not by going to a lesson on prayer or because my pastor told me to pray. I did it because I watched people pray. Like I
mm,
realized that good leadership is not giving people a motto to say, it's giving them a model to follow.
mm.
You
Yes.
can you can learn. It's by osmosis that you're going to get the best lessons out of people. So I learned to pray by doing that. I learned how to lead. I learned how to sell things because of the way my dad taught me to do it. So I realized that the greatest leadership lessons I ever got were from just being around the real deal in that area. Now everybody's got their issues, but I just realized if I can learn from everybody by being around them. And I realized with my leadership style is I'm not going to tell people what to do. I'm going to tell them what I do.
Mm,
It's a big difference. What the days of going, you have to do this because I'm this position and you're that position are over, by the way.
wow. Wow.
Not only are they're so over for a lot of reasons, but social media canceled a lot of it because you're called now if you lead by that way. Is you're called abusive, you're called a dictator. It's just an old way of leading. And what I've realized is titles or position on an org chart might be the easiest way to try to get something done, like saying I'm this and you're this, so you have to get it done, but it's not sustainable.
Mm,
Best way to get things done is to empower people to win where they're gifted at, to let people walk into their calling.
mm,
So let me use the church as an example because my
mhm.
my context is a church. So I tell people our pastors at our church, we have 16 pastors on our staff, or maybe more than that, I'm not sure, but our pastors are not over anyone, they're under everyone.
Wow.
That's the mentality difference. It's we're not over anybody, we're under anyone,
Wow.
everybody. The days of us searching for a title are over. Jesus never went for the title, he went for the towel. His perspective was let me wash their feet. So that's leadership
Yep.
because we actually realize when Jesus is washing disciples feet, he's not trying to do some like hey subtle brag of how great I am. He's actually preparing them for their mission because their mission was to go into all the world. He's cleaning them up to go
Mm,
do they're called to do.
yep.
So it's not about us. It's about how we can make them win. So I love this whole series. It's going to be so good and people need to listen to every single podcast because it's a new perspective of how to lead, realizing the greatest success is actually your successor. Your greatest,
Mm,
let me say it this way. This is a line, and I use it throughout the book, but I use it with our staff all the time. They can quote it before I even finish it.
mm.
It's the greatest thing will not be what you do, it'll be who you raise.
Wow.
So
Yes.
that's the reality. The reality is we lead with them because we want them to succeed, and their success is actually my success.
Mm, that's
Um,
powerful.
and they don't exist for me. I actually exist for them. And the more they win, it's like parenting. You know what
Yep.
I mean?
Yep.
We know it in parenting. In parenting, your greatest thing is not I'm the dad, you're the child. You'll listen to me because you'll win that one, but you'll lose the war.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
and we're in it for the long-term relationship. I,
Yeah.
I want my kids to be around me when they're 30.
Yes.
So I don't want to win the war right now because I used a title. I actually want to have the relationship buy-in to where they want to be around me even in difficult seasons.
Yep.
Right, that was a
Uh,
long answer, but that's my dream. It's such a passionate topic for me.
I love it. I love it. Years ago, I worked in a rather large church in the Chicago area. And I had started an MBA, and one of the classes we took was on leadership, and they handed us a book called Primal Leadership, written by Daniel Goleman, kind of the father of emotional intelligence. And that's when my brain was first open to this idea of like, wait a minute, for years, yes, we let out of fear and control and authority, and but you don't have to. When you tap into people's positive emotions, they're actually more productive, they're healthier. I mean, it's just amazing what happens. Just because you touched on it, why do you think, this is just my own perspective, and you could disagree and tell me why, but why do you think kind of in the church world and really outside of the church world, do people respond to that heavy, authoritative, lead out of fear leader sometimes? I mean, it seems like we see them succeed when leaders, are big and brash and authoritative. I mean, there's a difference between having confidence and being authoritative. Just wondering why you think sometimes people kind of just follow along with that leader.
I think they do. In the short run, they win.
Mm,
It's too, anybody that says, um, they're a success. I'm going, we haven't seen the whole story. I
wow.
don't care if you're 35 years old and you've got a big business. We haven't
Yeah.
seen the end of your story. We don't know
Yeah.
if 5 years down the road your marriage is going to fail and the economy is going to collapse. We don't know what you're building.
Yep.
That's why people come to me and they're like, "Oh, Radiant Church, wow, what a success!" I'm going, "No, no, no, no. You're too early to call us a success. We're 10 years in. Talk
Mm,
to me when I'm 60. Let's see if we really won this thing." So you can win in the short term by being authoritarian dictator, my way or the highway.
yep.
But I just don't think people are going to stick with you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't stick with a leader like that.
Yeah.
It's impressive, but you can impress people really by your strengths, but you impact them through your weaknesses.
Mm,
You impact them through your vulnerability, through your struggles. That's why they say one of the most crucial things for a parent to say to their kids these days, which didn't happen in the 80s when I was growing up. And my parents did it, but parents didn't do it. It was a no-no for parents in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now they realize it was such a massive mistake. They say one of the greatest things you can tell your children today is "I'm sorry."
mm,
Do you see
absolutely.
that? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because now we realize you'll actually get more relational buy-in from your vulnerability and admitting you're wrong than you going, "I'm never going to admit I'm wrong. I'm the dad, I'm the parent.
Yep.
You're going to be the child. I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it." We learned all those statements, and the
Yep.
reality is you're not going to win
Right.
if that way. So I
Yep.
would challenge people. We admire those people. We love them. We love the, my way or the highway, buck stops with me people. I
Yep.
just don't know if it's a win
Yep.
long term.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. Well, hey, I kind of live under the leadership principle that life is just not fair, right? Everything
Mm.
always happens to me. I have my whole list, right? And so that's one of the things why I loved going through this. I was on a flight a couple weeks ago and just, man, piled right through it. I love that you put together, this idea that, like, hey, some people think everything's kind of handed to some on a silver platter. It's just not. We're all in that boat. Help people get there. Like, why, how can we realize, wait a minute, we're all in the same place. We all have unfair advantages.
Yeah. So an unfair advantage, let me give you an example of it.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to be in the NBA. You have a 1 in a million shot of being in the NBA. So if someone's listening to this and you're investing all that money in your kids, they're not going to get there. They're not going to be in the NBA. Just wanted you to let you know that they're not going to make it.
Mm.
So there's a 1 in a million shot that you're going to be in there. If you're over 7 foot tall, the odds go from 1 in a million to 1 in 6.
Right.
So, like that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And but being over 7 feet tall is unfair. You ever try to fly on an airplane? Being over 7 feet tall, you hit your head under every different door you walk in. It's unfair in every single way, except you can make millions of dollars playing basketball if you can learn to take your unfairness and turn it into an advantage.
Yep.
It's the same with life. Everybody has unfair things given to them. The way you were raised, the rejection you experience, the lack of money in your bank account right now, your even your setbacks in your own health.
Yep.
Everything we have that you would sit there and go, it's unfair. It's unfair that I have this. I believe with God's help that you can learn how to leverage that unfair thing for your advantage. And that's what the
Mm.
whole book is about.
Yep.
The whole book looks at the life of Joseph, who, for those that don't know the Bible, Joseph, there's two Josephs in the Bible. This is the Old Testament one.
Yep.
It's from a pretty famous family, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob's kind of the fathers of the faith. And then Jacob's 11th child is a guy by the name of Joseph. He was favored amongst the sons, has a dream, but then everything from the dream to the destiny is a difficult road. And people need to understand that. Just because there's a dream put in your heart doesn't mean it's going to happen right away.
Mm.
And Joseph goes on a 13-year, very unfair journey that I mentioned 7 different unfair seasons that he goes through that I believe we've all been through.
Yep.
But how he responded in them matters. I'll just say this one last thing on it. You can have 2 people go through the exact same unfair thing. Let's say they lose their job. 2 people go through it. One of them can learn how to take that unfair scenario and, with God's help and with God's guidance, make it better. They can get better. They can walk into a better plan, a better purpose. They can walk into their destiny. Somebody else can lose their job, have that unfair thing happen to them, but they can get bitter. They can get resentful. They
Yep.
can become entitled. They become victims. And what happens? They don't do it God's way, and they get worse instead of getting better. So the choice is up to us of what we do with the unfair things in life.
Wow. Wow. Boy, that's so good. And uh, from my perspective, so many leaders and myself at times walking through unfair seasons, uh, you know, maybe before we get some gray hair or some wisdom or some, leadership behind us, we're pounding the desk. Why is this happening to me? Doesn't seem to be happening, to anybody. What's a nugget or a piece of wisdom that you can say to that leader who's, walking through that season for them to be able to recognize, wait a minute, God's actually doing something pretty incredible with this season, slow down and learn all that you can. I mean, give us something there.
Well, we live life forward, but we understand life backwards. One day you're going to get to a place later in life and you're going to look backwards and you're going to say this phrase, oh, it makes sense now.
Wow.
It had to happen for me to
Wow.
get here. So that's a faith maturing statement. It's you saying this difficult season I had to go through to get. So I'll give my church as an example. We started in this rundown, dirty dollar theater. I was so frustrated. I mean, we're in the church planning world. You can live vicariously through social media, through what everybody else's successes are, and you're
Yep.
looking at them going, "It's worse off for me." And I always thought that they have a better building. They were all they had a better facility. They
Yep.
were in a better part of town. And I looked at my dirty 190 seat rundown sticky floor theater that I was in. And I could have gone, this is terrible. But then I
Yep.
realized, now I look back, that had to happen. It was that
Yep.
facility that we ended up 3 or 4 years later taking over the lease. We were able to renovate it. It became a broadcast location. It was still limited on space, so it forced us to go multi-site. Now
Yep.
we've launched 9 different church campuses. So I realized the unfair thing was necessary for me to go to the next season. So you've got to understand whatever is unfair in your life right now, the difficult season in your life, we are firm believers, especially as people who have given their life to Christ. My life belongs to God. If this was brought to me, there's a purpose to it. And now if I leverage it right, I can see God use it for his glory. But you've got to have the right attitude. You've got
Yep.
to have an attitude of God. So I asked myself this question. It's in the book. And I challenge people all the time. When you're in a difficult season, this is the question you ask. What are you trying to teach me right now? What are you
Yes.
trying to teach me? Because the journey for the children of Israel, if you know their story, they're in Egypt in slavery and then they go to the promised land. The journey should have lasted somewhere between 20 and 40 days from, taking 1 million or 2 million people out of Egypt, walking them into the promised land. It took them 40 years. And the reason it took them 40 years was because of a simple phrase. They didn't learn what God wanted them to learn.
Yep.
So your journey is going to take longer and be more difficult. Difficult seasons are going to come. How long you stay in them is up to you based off of, are you learning the lesson God wants you to learn?
Wow.
And if you learn the lesson, he'll bring you to the next. It's like school. Like
Yep.
you're not going to go to the next grade until you pass the test. Are you
Yep.
passing the test?
Yep.
So I've had to recognize in every difficult season, okay, what is this test for? There's something that God's trying to teach me.
So powerful. And especially as leaders, I mean, people are looking to us to communicate during that season. And so
Yep.
you just nailed it with the, your attitude, your character, because I've,
Yep.
if all of a sudden you become mopey in that season or everybody's against you, then you're going to lead that way. What's some encouragement for leaders to not adopt, that attitude when it comes to your communication, but to adopt, a healthy, positive, to communicate, to your people during those seasons?
Oh yeah. Big mistake that I see people do is so every leader is battling something right now.
Mm,
I'm battling. We all battle. And what I challenge people to say is you communicate to people your scars. You don't communicate to people your wounds.
wow.
There's a big difference in those two things. So, for instance, the stories I'm telling now are from victories in my past season. But it don't be the leader that gets on the stage that mopes and cries in front of your people about how tough life is right now. Because honestly, that we call it having appropriate vulnerability.
Mm,
So show people your scars. Hey, I went through this. It was a tough season and God healed me and he's brought me through. But when I'm in a battle, I've got my friends around me, I've got my pastor in my life, I've got my spouse. I'm walking through that battle. But that's where good communication comes through. I'm going to present to them an appropriate vulnerability that
mm,
is going to create buy-in, going to celebrate where we're at, but at the same time, you don't want to ever be on that stage talking about how unfair life is, giving them a list of things that you're going through right now. And everybody walks away not thinking, I can be victorious, but I hope that guy's okay. Like that's
right.
what, and we've
Right.
all seen that story where they're like,
Yep.
yikes.
Yep.
So my communication challenge for people is like, I'm preaching previous victories
Mm,
and my current battles are next season's stories that I'm going to tell. But I'm getting through them right now.
so good. It's so good. Especially, for the leader who, in the day of social media wants to post, such a tremendous level of vulnerability online. It's like, what are we
No,
doing?
no, and I don't think your people need a perfect leader, but they
Right.
also they don't need to know all the details
Right.
right now. And so I tell stories. It's very interesting because, well, I'll tell a story. I mean, years ago, my wife had postpartum after one of our children, and we had five of them. So she had,
Mm,
she went through different seasons with that. But one of them, it really messed with her and with anxiety. She never had anxiety before in her life, and we went through that season, and it was really tough. And we had a counselor, we had our pastors involved, and then we had a whole Sunday where we were shared from the stage. And I remember people coming up to us like, I can't believe y'all were going through this and never talked to us. I'm like,
mm,
that's not our place. Our place is we wanted to share from a place of victory. Look how the win is. And it creates more buy in that. So when people are reading The Unfair Advantage, they're going to read some of these things and go, yeah, my life is unfair. Yeah, God can turn it around for the good. Use the principles, use the strategies I give them in the book, but also use appropriate vulnerability when sharing it.
absolutely. So I'm curious when you hear this phrase, lead with people, not at them, what comes to your mind? Are there any primary differences when you're like, okay, I know, when I'm leading with people, and I'm leading authentically, these characteristics are happening, these principles, I'd love your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things on it. First of all, I think a lead with people phrase is a leader that's very present.
Mm,
So they care deeply about the person in front of them. I think it's very much of like I'm in this with them. So we hosted a pastors gathering. Um, I don't know if you no forget about that. That was a year or two ago. We hosted like a revival night for our 10-year anniversary. Thousands and thousands of people showed up. It's amazing. So we get done with our last night. It's 11 something at night. Everybody's exhausted. And the guest speaker was there, takes off, and then it's me. So my assistant, some of my teams are going, okay, Pastor, we got it. We'll see. And I'm going, no, our staff is here. What are we doing? Oh, well we're packing up all the trailers and stuff. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's go work because I'm going to show them that this is not about I'm in some green room by myself,
Hmm.
that I'm on some hierarchy. No, we're going to do this thing together.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when you talk to some of them, they're like, some of the greatest things is, oh, we had conversations while we were stacking chairs, because it's not just him pointing at me. Those old days of the leader just going, you're going to do this. I'm going to go do what, the greater things I got to do. No, we do this stuff together.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is that being very present, being there in the moment, and genuinely care about
Mm,
people.
that's huge.
For the pastors that are listening, let me remind you, you are not in a business that you're trying to build a business or an organization. You build people.
Mm,
You love people. And if you don't love people, you're in the wrong industry. So when I hear that phrase, it's all about like, I'm just in the middle of it. And I know it's kind of controversial now. I don't know if it's controversial now, but one of my favorite leadership lessons was when the Ukrainian war broke out.
mm,
And Zelensky, they offered, hey, we'll get you out of here. We'll get you out. The country is getting bombed. And he said this phrase. He goes, "Don't send me a plane, send me bullets." I'm sitting there going, that's leadership.
Yep.
He could have gone to Switzerland and led the whole thing from Switzerland.
Yep.
But no, I'm on the front line.
Yep.
That's leadership.
I love it. Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. That's powerful. Because, in any organization, whether it's a church or a business or, companies, at times there are these power dynamics where, people have great ideas and they want to be heard. They want, their idea chosen. What are some thoughts for you? In your chapter on the wageless worker, you talked about initiative and, kind of having those moments where you step up and you talk to your boss. Could you give us some insights there where you're, if to our leaders who are going, okay, I believe I've got this dream, I've got these ideas, I just got to get, over this hump to be able to share them. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that
Well,
initiative?
let me say it twofold. First of all, for the leader that is trying to lead up, what I challenge our staff with is excel with what you've been given.
Mm,
And when you have margin, share how we can go to the next level. What I don't want you to do is share how we can go to the next level when you haven't done your job yet.
mm.
So I'm just a firm believer. Like, I've got people come to me going, I've got an idea of how, and I'm going, I want to hear your ideas, but your job is this.
Yes.
Do your job and then excel. And that's what we learned from Joseph's life. I mean, I give strong details
Yes.
in there. That's why I challenge business leaders. I'm like, take your staff through the book because the book will help them become a better work ethic. Because the reality is when nobody's watching, God is watching. Your boss is not your boss. You're doing as unto the Lord, and let God promote you. So do your job well.
Yep.
Now, let me talk to the people that are in charge. If you're in charge, again, this is lead with people. How do you do this? Is that you have to understand that the real health of your organization is how empowered are people multiple levels down to make decisions.
Wow.
So I love to just take time. Like, there's certain times where I'm at the office and I'm walking around and I'm talking to people 2-3 layers below me. Hey, what ideas have you got? What do you think we could do? You got to realize there's people with giftings inside of them that need to be called out and need to be encouraged. So you will never have more buy-in than when you let them weigh in on what they can do in their organization. So the more I figured out and go, oh man, you had this idea. And then from the stage or from, during our all staff, I'm sitting there going, hey, I talked to so-and-so and she's a group leader at this campus. And by the way, she had this idea, and then what is it doing? It's empowering our stuff to go, I don't have to be on the executive table to make decisions here. I have a voice, even if and that's got to start from the top.
It's so powerful. Now that my whole perspective is different, I'm part of the church body that I attend. I volunteer. I was a youth pastor for 15 years. Now I'm a small group leader. So I'm on the very opposite end. For 26 years, I'm listening to volunteers and, ideas and trying to, instill in our team. We've got to keep listening to those ideas Because if we don't, if we have that mindset of serving over everyone, we're not going to be open to those ideas, and we'll miss, all those moments to, give someone their day or receive their idea and promote them. Let me just ask you one last question. When it comes to the generations, for the first time in forever, I mean, we've got, we're spanning the gap of generations working together,
Hmm.
all of that kind of stuff. So you've got, the far end with the Gen Z and younger millennials who in my research, they kind of, they don't want to wait the 30 years, right, to get the
Right.
promotions and the heyday. And then you've got the boomers on the other end who are going, okay, everybody, like we've been there, done that. Maybe give a thought to the younger leader who's, just wanting to excel and exceed right now and isn't, waiting on that patience. And then to that older leader who's just going, how do I work with all these young people and communicate with them?
Well, if someone can figure it out, let me know because we have those positions ourselves.
Yes.
My challenge for the younger generation is if you can figure out work ethic and honor, you'll excel.
Mm,
You can honor the people that have gone before you, and you can because work ethic is not that hard these days. Like there's so many the boundaries. I'm going to clock in this time, clock out this time. I'm going to do
yep.
bare minimum because that's what we're paying me for. You don't have to do that much to stand out. So I would just say work on just good work ethic. Stand out. You'll never lose at going above and beyond. I just
Mm,
challenge them with that. And then with the older generation, and I would just say this is you are missing out on the ingenuity, the creativity of not tapping into those that are under 30. I'm
mm.
telling you, they think different than I do. In my 30s. Like I still say I'm 30s, but I'm close to 40. They just think different. The way they're thinking, the way they look at the world, the way they're handling cultural things. You have a lot to learn from them. And a healthy church, a healthy business, a healthy family is always multi-generational. That we
Mm,
celebrate both extremes.
yep.
We've got Joshua and Moses together. We've got the young and the old. Acts 2, the Spirit's going to be poured out. Young men and old men, we're going to dream dreams, have visions. So I think it's got to be both and so I'm intentional even without giving out titles. I'm intentional about putting people at the table who are in their mid 20s at the highest level of leadership at our church.
Mm,
That's a big deal. I mean, I don't run my own social media. I don't, if I have a good idea of a post, I don't post it. I send it to a guy who's way more creative than I am because I realize I don't know what works. If I have a graphic that I think is awesome for a sermon series, I don't run with it. But at the same time, if I'm going to touch on a sensitive subject, I'm going to talk to both generations.
mm.
So you've got to learn. It's the honor principle and then the work ethic can across the board. So
That's powerful.
I,
That's powerful. Any last insight you give to the leader who's trying to look at that obstacle and kind of transform it into an opportunity?
yeah, well, I give 7 of them in the book. Check it
Yep.
out, and you can buy the book anywhere books are sold and on Amazon. But my thing is simply this: is that whatever God's going to do in your life is going to take longer than you want it to take.
Mm,
It's going to be harder than you can imagine, but it's going to be better than you could have ever have thought. So lean into it.
yeah.
Trusting God means trusting His timing and His process. So I would encourage you just lean into the process. Figure out when you're in a difficult season, what is God trying to teach you? And if you'll learn the lesson, you'll pass the test and you'll get on to the next grade. So the future's
Love that.
bright, and the difficult season you're going through right now will make sense one day.
I love it. Love it. Hey, before I let you go, a couple rapid fire questions. Just let our audience kind of
Yeah, let's do it.
keep getting to know you. So we talk a lot about public speaking in this podcast. Do you have a favorite speaker? And I'll put the slash preacher in there as well. The favorite upfront communicator.
Oh, I can listen to Jensen Franklin pretty much all day long. I love Robert Morris. I love how Robert Morris teaches the Bible. I love how Chris Hodges makes really complex things simple.
Yes.
So we can learn
Yep.
from all those. And then Bishop Jakes. How can you not love Bishop Jakes? So
It's incredible. Is there a podcast either on the development side or the guilty pleasure side that you just love, that like it fills one of those two tanks for you?
uh Not real. I mean, I love a good true crime
Yeah.
podcast. I think they're kind of fun. So I have a leadership podcast called Made for More. People could check it out, but not really. Um, I just get information overload. I don't know.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
if I'm sitting down, I'm taking notes on them. So I'm like, it's a lot of note taking. So I can't just listen and drive. I wish
Yes.
I could.
Absolutely. So a fun thing, you've lived in the Tampa area now for a decade or so. Your family's, best area to go relax and enjoy.
Oh, our house. There's nothing better than your own home. So, if you come to Tampa, you got it. I mean, we have a river walk downtown. It's very fun. Tampa is known for people that don't know this. Tampa is known as some of the best steakhouses in America.
Mm.
So we have Burns, we have Charlie's, we have some steakhouses that people fly to Tampa to go to the steakhouses. So if you're a steak connoisseur, you go to Tampa and you can eat some good steaks.
I love it. I love it. Well, you touch on it a little bit. We'll put all of these in the show notes. But where's the best place people can go online to find you and more about what you do and your ministry and all that?
Yeah, aaronburke.com has got information about me personally, a lot of information about the book. If there's pastors that are watching or people that want to do a small group, we're releasing a small group curriculum and video series in January, February time. So if you're interested in that and want to bring people through it, you can find all that on aaronburke.com. And the church is called Radiant Church. So that's if you're in the Tampa Bay area, we got campuses all over. weareradiant.com.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll post all of that. Aaron, I mean, thank you so much. This was just absolute gold. Great wisdom. Appreciate your energy and excitement and just pouring into leaders, and can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, Speak With People listeners. So excited that you're a part of our community. If you've not joined our Facebook community group, hundreds and hundreds of leaders from around the country, all trying to elevate the importance and practice of healthy communication in our lives. We share ideas. We share different thoughts to kind of spur us on to be more effective, healthy communicators. Again, thanks so much for being a part of the podcast. We really do hope that you were challenged and inspired. And my hope is that this week you will speak with people and not at them. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.